receiving the presentations from 3 entities. But I will then allow Mr. Sakaza, because I don't want to waste time. Plenary starts at 2. We are also competing with load shedding, so I don't want to disadvantage people, and then they got cut because of the network. Mr. Sakaza, can you please take us through the roll call?
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and good morning to members and the department with the entities. Chair, so far we have the following members of the Portfolio Committee on Labour. We've got yourself, Chair, Honorable Dunjwa, Honorable Dabe, Honorable Nonsele, Honorable Zuma, Honorable Bagram, Honorable Kado, Honorable Yinana, Honorable Mkondo, Honorable Denner. That's what I see so far on my participants list, Chair. From the support staff, we've got myself, Chair, we've got Poshia Ndabeni, we've got Sibongiseni Ngobo, and we've got Temuko, the researcher. Chair, the only apology I received was from the Minister of Employment and Labour, who is in cabinet meeting. So I don't have any other from the members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sakaza. And from the department, Mr. Lamati.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and the honorable members and the colleagues who are on the platform. From the department, I have Mr. Sam Muratoba, who's the DDG responsible for public employment services, and Productivity South Africa falls under his responsibility. And we then have from CCMA, Mr. Mtembeni Nganana, who's the Executive Corporate Services. He is the leader of the delegation today. We received an apology from the CCMA National Director, and that's why Mr. Mtembeni is the leader of the delegation. He is accompanied by Ms. Maputi Mabaso, who's the Acting Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Nkosi Kosi, who's the Chief Information Officer, Ms. Zanele Mabaso, who's the Chief Audit Executive, Mr. Tolani Nduna, who's the National Senior Commissioner Dispute Resolution, and then Advocate Luvuyo Bono, who's the Chairperson of the Essential Services Committee. From the Nedlac, we have the Executive Director, Ms. Lisa Seftel. She's accompanied by the CFO, Mr. Faran Shamsuddin, and Ms. Nobuntu Sibisi, who's the Executive Manager Programs, Moibone Mulete, Senior Manager Corporate Services, Nozipho Ngema, Manager Strategic Support, Priscilla Mashabane, Acting Senior Manager Labor and Development, Vuisa Tafa, Acting Senior Manager Economics, Dumisani Ngumalo, Financial and Governance. We also have colleagues from the department, Mr. Tebo Kotejan, who's the Communications Chief Director, and Mr. Kangala Mutumela from the Minister's Office, Chief of Staff, and Zandi Mweli, the Chief of Staff from the the head of the Deputy Minister's Office. I also suppose, Chair, that Mr. From Productivity South Africa, Mr. Justice Chifularo will also be joining. I haven't seen him, and I haven't heard who will be accompanying him, but I know that the CEO also tendered an apology and indicated that Mr. Justice Chifularo will be representing Productivity South Africa. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, DG. Welcome, DM. I think I saw you. I saw the deputy minister. Can you please the agenda on Mr. Sakaza?
Okay, Chair, I'm gonna just share it now. Let me open it.
Whilst you are sharing, members, I've just been told by the Secretariat that Nedlac is, as much as our agenda is CCMA, Nedlac and Productivity SA, Nedlac is requesting to present first. Mr. Wababa, I have not been told the reason for that. So as for our agenda, it's going to be CCMA, Nedlac, and PSA. I just wanted to check whether the PLO is aware of that request. Mr. Wababa? Okay. If then there is no reason, we'll then start.
No, sorry, Chair. I was trying to unmute myself. No, there's no much reason. It was that the Nedlac were the first to kind of connect, and given also the reason that we have actually mentioned in terms of the load shedding, I was thinking that if they are already in, it may actually serve the meeting well to make sure that they start. But one does not want to disrupt the agenda of the chair if it follows as the chair was explaining. Thank you very much.
Sorry, we're all victims of load shedding. Can we then follow our agenda, CCMA? And I will request presenters. I'm not saying they must just rush. I'll present presenters to be sensitive of the fact that we are in this space. We are challenged with load shedding. So as you'll be making your presentations, take that into consideration. But secondly, we would like to see your faces. But before that, don't we have any guests? There are people here that were not called. Zolan, are there any guests that are here?
Chair, I also see names that I don't know, so I would assume we do have guests.
Can they introduce themselves? Manu Priscilla.
Chairperson Priscilla was introduced. She's from Nedlac at the DG. It's Priscilla Mashibani. I apologize.
I would advise that must write Nedlac. PMG.
Sure, Chairperson.
PMG.
Hi, Chair. This is Funoko Dlamini, and I'm from the Parliamentary Monitoring Group. Thank you.
You're supposed to be the first to introduce yourself because you know the protocols. I don't know why I guess think that now that we are virtual, people may just, and people just writing their names, Vuiswa, Sipo, Olani. Please, can this process be taken, these virtual meetings be taken serious? Members are putting their names and their surnames. But some of the staff saying just writing Manusipo. See, can they please be professional? Because this is a professional meeting. It's not just a meeting that any SIPO can come in.
Chair Sipo Ndebele is the acting DDG Labour Market Policy. Is saying is unable to amend the name. I think he wrote on the chart as well. we apologize for that. And also just to confirm that Mr. Justice Chifularo has joined as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Chair, through you, Zolani. Chair,
Yes.
I was saying, I wanted to say I can from my side rename SIPO and then put the same in.
Okay,
Chair,
all right.
I'll do that from my side.
All right,
Okay.
all right, thank you. CCMA, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour, honourable members of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour, Deputy Minister, DG of the department, CEOs of entities and executives. It is always our immense pleasure, Chairperson, to present to this committee an account on the work that we do as the CCMA. Ours, Chairperson, is not just work, but it's a calling. We have to do our work that we are charged with diligently and ensure that we touch the lives of the vulnerable. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members. My name is Mtembeni Nganana. I am the Executive for Corporate Services at the CCMA. I will be supported by my fellow executives as well as Advocate Luvuyo, who's the Chairperson of the Essential Services Committee. May I have my presentation flighted, if that is possible? Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I'm not going to dwell much on the legislative framework of that. We can go to the next slide. I'm not going to dwell much on the legislative framework of the CCMA. We are a creature of statute. I'm unable to control from this side, but you can go to the next one. We are a creature of statute. We are formed in terms of the Labour Relations Act. Chairperson, the Labour Relations Act in section 115 provides for, we can go to the next slide that deals with the functions of the CCMA, please. Not this one, the next one. It provides for discretionary functions as well as mandatory functions. We are created in the main to deal with these two functions, mandatory functions as well as discretionary functions. We can go to the next slide, please. The next slide. The next slide. Chairperson, we have the strategy which is premised on, we can go to the next slide, slide 9, which is premised on the programs, 5 programs as shown in this slide, Chairperson. I'm not going to spend time on this, Chairperson. I would like to go straight to the performance of the entity for Q1. If we can go to the slide, please. Chairperson, what we have done as the entity, we did not put a 3-robot color where we have red, green, and amber. We only have 2 legends. Green, we've achieved. Red, we've not achieved. Even if the work that we're expected to achieve, there is a minor discrepancy or difference, we still report that as red. Chairperson, if we go to the next slide, for the Q1, we had 9 targets that we had to achieve. At the time of reporting to our accounting authority, we had 7 targets that were achieved and 2 targets that were not achieved, which translated into a percentage of 78%. Can we go to the next 3 slides? Because I want to zoom in into those 2 targets that were not achieved at the time of reporting. And go down. I think it's slide 15. Oh, okay, yes. Chairperson, when you look at this slide, we have 2 targets that were not achieved, and I will underline at the time of reporting. These are cumulative targets. If it's not achieved in this quarter, we have an opportunity to achieve it in the second quarter or in the next quarter. The first target, Chairperson, dealt with issuing of awards within 14 days, which is legislated. The second target, Chairperson, dealt with the Quality Award Index. Each and every award that we issue out, Chairperson, has to be within the 14 days timelines. Second, each and every award that we issue out has to be perused by a seasoned or a senior commissioner that will look at how the law was applied in that award. Now, Chairperson, the reason, and you will see that we have recorded 0. And when I started, Chairperson, I said we do not have amber. It's either green or red. The reason, Chairperson, we do what we call quality assurance. We have internal audit. At the time of reporting, the evidence of what was reported, which is 99%, could not be verified. And then we decided to put a 0. We presented to our accounting authority as a 0. We explained. They then said, because you did the work, provide the evidence for quality assurance. That was validated, Chairperson, and the 99% was indeed confirmed. So subsequent to presenting this report, I must give confirmation and assurance that these 2 targets were achieved, Chairperson. We wanted to present it as it was presented at the end of Q1, Chairperson. But I'm giving assurance to this committee that these have been achieved. If we can go to the next slide, please. Now, Chairperson, this next slide deals with the top 8 referring sectors. As you can see, Chairperson, we have the private security that was high in terms of referring. But Chairperson, I want us to look at, because I'm going to come to the other slide that deals with the dashboard. I want us to zoom into the 17%. I want us to zoom into the 5% of domestic, as well as the 4% of agriculture and farming. And the reason I'm zooming into this, Chairperson, when I started, I said ours is a calling and we have to touch the lives of the vulnerable. We do have programs that we have put in place in as far as agriculture is concerned, Chairperson, so that we increase our access into those sectors. In Q1, we had 43,129 referrals that were received. This was an increase of 8% compared to the Q1 of the previous year. We can go to the next slide, please. So this is the slide, Chairperson, I was talking about. You will see the middle of the slide, referral by vulnerable sectors, the agriculture, the domestic, as well as private security. This slide, Chairperson, is a summary. It gives a high-level overview of what has happened over the quarter. You will note that all the conciliations had were within a turnaround of 22 days on average. We recorded 99%. We maintained our settlement rate at 80% with a very low postponement rate of 8%, Chairperson. I've spoken about the total number of cases of 42,000 that were referred during the quarter. We can go to the next one. I want to deal with the issues of finance, Chairperson, but before I deal with the issues of finance, earlier on, I spoke about our intervention in terms of the vulnerable sector. You'll see in this map, Chairperson, we have 2 things in the main, the capacity building initiatives, as well as the workplace outreach initiatives, where we go to these sectors, we tell them about their rights. This is now the second part of our mandate, Chairperson, which is discretionary, where we want to do what we call nip it in the bud, preventing the dispute from happening. We do awareness activities. We ensure that they know about their rights so that anything that may arise to a dispute is managed at that level. Can you go to the next slide, please? Now, Chairperson, on this slide, in the quarter under review, we had a tranche of 269 million. Of the 269 million, Chairperson, we spent 236 million. And the overall that we spent, Chairperson, in the quarter, it was 22%. And we are of the view that 22%, we still geared towards healthy spending. When we look at the quarter of 100%, it will be 25%. We're not far off from the 25%, from the budget of R1 billion that we have, Chairperson. Can we then move to slide 29, please? Whilst we're going to slide 29, Chairperson, I must also give assurance that we are financially healthy and we are liquid. We are spending within what we've been allocated, Chairperson. Yes, there are those challenges that are coming with budget, but we are spending within the constraints that we have. When we look at this slide 29, Chairperson, For the quarter under review, there are no irregular expenditures that were recorded. We had 4 cases of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, Chairperson, for the quarter under review. And I must also assure this committee that we are in a process of this 80,000. We have already recovered 12,000. We are in a process of recovering. We have something called loss and control, where those that have caused fruitless or wasteful expenditure, even irregular expenditure, are caused to account and are expected to pay the monies that were regarded as fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So that is a process that is ongoing and it's very effective, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. If there's anything I have left out, my colleagues will add, especially finance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any additions? Either the DG or colleagues, or start with colleagues from CCMA or DG.
Chair, thanks. I think the CCMA colleague has said everything, Chair, that needed to be said. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Members, can I just, sorry for this, can I just check if members will be comfortable with the process that we receive all presentations and then we ask questions, or we ask questions after each and every presentation? Which one you think is more, it's going to make our life easy? Honorable Mdabe.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you and the honorable members, the department and the Deputy Minister. Chair, I think let's receive all the presentations and then engage on them so that we try and minimize time due to load shedding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Nobody has got, is there any person who has got a contrary view? By the looks, Honorable Mkondo?
No, Chair. No. Morning, Chair. I don't have a contrary view. I'm trying to lower my hand. I'm struggling. I agree with the view. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Nedlac? Nedlac.
Person, good morning, honorable members. Good morning, Deputy Chair. I'm just sharing my presentation. I hope you can see it now.
In my screen, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
On my, oh,
Okay. There it is. Okay. Thank you. So I'm presenting the first quarter performance report, which was from April to June last year. And as you'll see from my report, you know, there's quite a lot of development since then. So I will try also to, you know, focus on where there has been progress. The highlights of that period was that the Labour Law Reform Task Team got underway with an independent facilitator and technical support for the parties, as well as a drafting team. And that Reform Task Team has continued to do work over the period. You'll remember that at that time, in respect of COVID, we were, the state of disaster on COVID was ending. And there was proposals from the Department of Health about regulations, which were extensively discussed in COVID. And then internally, we were developing a hybrid approach. And in respect of governance, we started the redrafting and extensive discussion on a new Nedlac bill, a constitution and protocol. In terms of challenges, the key challenge really was in closing the backlog on COVID-19 TERS to beneficiaries. Nedlac played an oversight role in relationship to that. And then there were ongoing capacity constraints due to the recruitment processes not being fruitful. If you look at the indicators, there's really, all our indicators were met except one, which related to IT. We have a target, although we've amended it now to 90%. We achieved 94.23 of resolving all the complaints against the required period. And the reason why we didn't was really linked to both users not struggling to use applications and new engineers with service providers. Now, in terms of the key things that we were involved in, so in the Public Finance and Monetary Chamber, we were looking at a number of bills. I think the most prominent being the Public Procurement Bill. Subsequently, in the other quarters, the considerations of these bills have been completed. While in the Trade and Industry Chamber, I think it was more ongoing work and engagements around the government incentive schemes, forms of equity ownership, the Decadal Plan, which is about innovation, as well as an urgent meeting with the Minister Patel in preparation for a WTO meeting on trade matters. In terms of labor and development, as I indicated earlier on, there was engagements on labor law reform. We concluded a new draft code of good practice on protest action to defend the socioeconomic interests of workers. That subsequently was published in August. And there's ongoing work on demarcation disputes. And there was also a joint task team set up for the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide draft bill that has also now been concluded. And I think the bill has been tabled in Parliament. On social development and development issues, there was engagement on a social development white paper. It's also now concluded. A review of study visits on the EPWP, conclusion of a deeds register amendment bill, and a research reference group was established on land policy. In terms of the COVID response, we agreed on a partnership to do education and training on COVID. That partnership includes the National Institute for Occupational Health and now also the Compensation Fund. And we are now rolling out the training to organized business and labor. And then on the, as I indicated earlier on, the UIF subcommittee continued to exercise oversight to address backlogs. And the National Nedlac Rapid Response Task Team on COVID started to reflect how to learn the lessons from the COVID response. In terms of the ERRP and economic recovery, here there are really three key areas of work. One is on freight and public transport, where the focus was engaging particularly on the challenges facing port congestion and Transnet. On the SMME work stream, there was quite a lot of work done about looking at ways to reduce red tape for small businesses in the informal sector, as well as a progress report from the Deputy Minister on implementation of legislation to support cooperatives. There was also a national rail policy that received updates on the implementation of the white paper, which was approved in the previous quarter. On energy, it was really just engagement and updates on just energy transition, the work of Operation Vulindlela, and so on. This was before the establishment of NEACOM. And then we have ongoing reports on indicators and trends, and we have also set up a portal, although it is not necessarily used to track all ERRP commitments. In terms of the governance task team, this is really, it's now concluded work on amendments to the bill, the constitution, and a protocol for tabling matters. And we've also been liaising with the presidency on a presidency's framework for strengthening the legislative program and executive accountability in Parliament. In terms of our internal corporate services, as we indicated, there was a recruitment process. It wasn't successful senior managers, but a new economics manager and SCM manager have been appointed. A training plan was approved, and we start, as well as a program with the University of Pretoria to provide leadership development to both social partners and staff. And then on information technology, we continue to upgrade and improve our system. In terms of the capacity building for constituencies, business continued to, or almost concluded a study on electricity price path, which is now, there's now a document from the DMRE, which is being engaged upon in Nedlac. And then At that point in time, the capacity building funds were used to support community and labor to attend the ILO Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor. In terms of the finances, what we've indicated here is the approved budget, the actuals, and the variance. And you can see that there is a positive variance. We weren't able to spend all our budget, but we have spent more than in the previous first quarter. If you look at it from a program perspective, the variance is the least in administration, which relates to salaries and is most in core operations, which relates to consultancy fees. And there is also variance in capacity building. Here is some of the reasons. On the consultancy fees, it's mostly because in the first quarter and in the last quarter of the previous year, we were still appointing consultants, but they hadn't started to do work. I wouldn't call them consultants. I think they're more service providers. For example, you know, in the Labor Law Reform Task Team, independent facilitator and legal drafters. On audit fees, I think those of you that are experienced in government will know that the bulk of audit fees are spent in the second quarter. And on constituency capacity building, you know, I think it always takes long for the constituencies to identify their capacity building needs. And in addition, with organized labor, their big expenditure is usually in this fourth quarter when they have a big and extensive labor school. Chairperson, there is my report.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nedlac. Sorry for that, members. Don't know what has happened. Productivity SA. Productivity SA.
Good morning. If I can be allowed to share my screen.
Yes, and your face, if we may see it. And then if
face.
All right. If they need to affect your thing, you will switch it off.
Yes,
we see you.
The host have disabled me from sharing. If they can enable me to share.
Mr. Sakaza, can you assist with the sharing? Matapel. Thank you.
Matapel, Chair.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Greetings, Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee. Greetings also to the leadership of the department, the Deputy Minister, the DG, and the entire leadership of the department, as well as leaders and colleagues from the entities. I will not take too much time in terms of presenting. I've just selected a few slides that I think will be sufficient to get the message across as far as performance in Q1 of 2022-2023 financial year is concerned. This is a well-known mandate of Productivity South Africa, how we have been established, and what is it that we do, the kind of value we add at different level, which doesn't need much explanation. Safe to say, from our mandate, we have developed a business model that enables us to execute all our function as enshrined in Section 32 of the Employment Services Act and we broadly achieved them through our 3 flagship programs, the one that focuses on competitiveness, improvement services, the business turnaround and recovery, as well as research, innovation, and statistics. When it comes to performance in the first quarter of 2022-2023, we have about 9 targets that we were chasing along these 5 strategic objectives that are in our strategic plan. We managed to achieve 7 of the 9 and didn't completely achieve in 2 of them. Hence, we have recorded the performance at 78% in the first quarter. It's important, however, to highlight that most of these targets are cumulative by nature, which means if they have not been achieved in a particular quarter, they can still be achieved within the financial year. On the financial side, we still grapple with regard to the financial situation of the organization. In the quarter, we had a deficit of about 4 million. As I conclude, we are still hoping that the implementation of the single source funding model will come a long way in alleviating the financial challenges of the entity, as well as further support of the enterprise development that we have tabled in this particular report. We also want to ensure that the BT&R governance is strengthened and we optimize the utilization of the IMD report that we produce in partnership with the Institute of Management Development through our research, innovation, and statistics. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. I don't know what is happening. This gadget of mine keeps on muting me. Thank you very much, Mr. Justice. Honorable members, there are the presentations, 3 of them. Can I invite the questions from members?
As Michael Bagram.
Honorable Kado, Honorable Bagram, Honorable Kondo, Honorable Mudabe, in that order. Honorable Kado.
Thank you, Chair. My questions are for Nedlac in the main. Firstly, on the establishment of the Labour Law Reforms Task Team, who actually serves on that drafting team and what are its scope and mandate and timeframes? I'm particularly curious to know whether there are any representatives from small business involved and whether the question of the automatic collective bargaining agreements extension is on the table. Then in terms of the governance task team, am I correct in understanding from your presentation that the redrafting of the Nedlac founding documents, including the Nedlac Act, is now complete? And if that's the case, what is the way ahead? On the Unemployment Insurance Subcommittee, I note from your presentation that you say that the subcommittee continued to exercise oversight over addressing backlogs of the COVID-19 TERS payments and the WABU payments too. What form does this oversight actually take? I mean, what's the mechanism that exists to try and alleviate and reduce the backlogs? And the reason I ask is because I still get loads of complaints from members of the public who haven't been paid their UIF. and it's an ongoing problem. So I'm really interested to know exactly how you go about tackling this. And then finally, I wanted to know, what is Nedlac doing in response to the load shedding crisis? Are you keeping track of job shedding in response to load shedding? I mean, we see from today's press that massive retrenchments are planned at Telkom and the post office. Load shedding is obviously having an absolutely devastating impact on jobs. Businesses are closing down, jobs are being destroyed. What exactly is Nedlac doing, and how is it positioning itself to help or mitigate or intervene? Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Honorable Bagram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. First of all, with Nedlac, we had a lot of promises, and I'm sure Nedlac took very careful interest in the SONA speech delivered by our president on Thursday. And we had a lot of promises about looking into the enhancement of small business, into deregulation, well, I mean, I don't have the speech in front of me, but there were a lot of promises. I have no doubt most of them won't be kept, but I presume that Nedlac has looked at those promises and has been debating them, and they might have even fed it into the presidency for the SONA speech. Can we have some feedback on that, and how many of the promises will be kept and how much of the deregulation is actually going to be made? I presume the president wouldn't have spoken about that unless Nedlac had endorsed it. So I'd like some comment on that. With productivity, we have a board member that had that big investment that was going to be made from the UIF monies in the PIC. Maybe they can give us some feedback as to whether that board member is still a board member of productivity. I'd be very interested to know. With regard to the UIF, there was an investment about 4 years ago that went astray and was stolen from the PIC that belonged to the UIF. How far are they on that? They were investigating it. They've been investigating it for 4 years. I want to know what's happened. And then this future investment that they're going to make through the board member of the Productivity SA, the minister hasn't come forward. He said he was doing an investigation. He's been investigating now for almost 2 months, but he hasn't come forward to tell us what the investigation has produced and whether that's off the table. I'd like to know what's happening with that, because that looks like it could have gone the same way as that past investment which they were trying to invest, which was then stolen. I'd like to know where we stand. And then, of course, finally, with all the retrenchments taking place that my Honourable Cardo asked about, the UIF should be able to produce figures as to whether there have been more UIF claims and whether they can cope. Whether there's no problem with their funding, and there should be no issue because they've got all this extra money to invest. I don't know how much they were going to invest in this new investment through the PIC, but I presume there's no issue with monies. So I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Honorable Mkonto.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, Chair, honorable members, the Deputy Minister, the DG, and his team. Chair, I know that it's not part of CCMA's targets as per the report, but I want to know as to how far are they with the process of requesting offices from the municipalities and traditional leaders, as they promised that they are envisaging taking their services to the people, or even to the rural areas. And then I also want to know, Chair, as to in which sector do they classify petrol attendants? They've been talking about the number of referrals that they have received from different sectors. Then I want to know as to which from those sectors do they classify the petrol attendants? Because I've been receiving a lot of complaints from petrol attendants. Maybe it's just that I don't understand as to which sector do they fall under. And then with CCMA and productivity SA chair, they are talking about accumulative targets that they couldn't achieve them because they are accumulative. In which sense, Chair? Because if it's a process, when you set a target, you will say, during this time, I would have achieved this level of the process. If it's numerical, it will be, I would have achieved 20 out of the 50. So I don't understand why the reasons for non-achievement could be a accumulative target. That is why, Chair, I'm requesting that to be explained as to how is the accumulation and how does it lead to them not achieving the targets. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mkhonto. Honorable Mdabe.
Thank you, Chair, and once again, good morning to you and the honorable members. Chair, on CCMA, slide 16 and 17, it's a slide 16 talks about the high impact labor market contributions, and slide 17 is the first quarter dashboard. Now, on the slide 16, talks about the percentage of each sector that has referrals being made, and slide 17 talks about the number of areas of complaints those referrals are made about. My concern and issue is in relation to national minimum wage. It does not give us the sense in terms of which sectors that are unable to meet the national minimum wage, and what is the magnitude, and how does it then affect the companies that are unable to meet or implement the national minimum wage. Second to that, it's the question of whether are there any repeating offenders of particular sectors. Have therefore then those sectors applied for exemption? If not, how many of them are repeating offenders? On Nedlac, on the issue of the employment of foreign nationals, truck drivers, and the hospitality industry, are these matters finding expression at Nedlac? And what are the outcomes of the deliberation, if there are any? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nonsele. Honorable Nonsele, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for my muted mic was not moving. Good morning, Chair. Good morning to honorary members and the honorable members. Good morning also to Deputy Minister and also DG and all leadership on the platform and guests. Chair, my question, I think the first one has been covered. The second one is with regard to productivity SA. I'm just trying to check with regard to the areas relating to the slide where they deal with the BTR, that is business turnaround and recover. In the area where they have not achieved, the annual target is 3,350, and then the target is 400, and the actual that has been achieved is 291. The question would be, to what extent are they, in fact, can they just elaborate more on the question, particularly with regard to the areas that led to non-achievement? The second one, which is related to that, is with regard to the numbers or the focus of their intervention in terms of saving jobs. Because overall, the jobs that have been saved, that is with regard to slide, the earlier slide, I think it's about 291, 261. But the question is, if you go into the market, there's quite a number of job shedding, including the most recent one that is pending of the South African post offices. My question, therefore, would be the extent to which PSA is able to engage with the big and including public sector institutions in terms of taking the message around productivity on the other side, but also ensuring that the strategies of saving jobs are in fact more canvassed broadly than currently is the case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nonsele. Honorable members will then request CCMA to respond, Nedlac to respond on its questions, and productivity SA respond on the questions that they've been asked.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, let me first deal with the issue of the question relating to requesting of offices with municipalities as well as traditional leaders. Chairperson, we do have an MOU with SALGA, South African Local Government Association, and they have presence throughout the Republic of South Africa. So as far as that is concerned, we're working closely with SALGA in terms of using their offices to conduct our hearings. And how this assists us, Chairperson, it also assists in a sense that the vulnerable users that are far away from the cities will be able to access the services of the CCMA through the location of the municipal offices. Chairperson, the petrol attendants will fall under the National Bargaining Council for Chemical Industries. Chairperson, on the issue of the targets, relative targets, and the reason for non-achievement at the time of reporting, Chairperson, was not that because the target is cumulative, but it was because at the time of reporting, a 99% achievement was reported, but the evidence that was provided for quality assurance could not be verified because it was not credible at that time. We then reported the zero. After reporting the zero, our accounting authority said, because you say you did work which amounted to 99%, go verify that 99% using internal audit for assurance purposes. Internal audit then verified that work, and they did confirm that it's 99%. That is why, in my presentation, I said, I want to give assurance that these two targets that are reported as not having been achieved at the time of reporting at the end of Q1, they have been achieved. Chairperson, on the issue of slide, I think it's slide 16 and 17, whilst I'm going to ask Polani to deal with the issues of national minimum wage and the repeat offenders, I want to quickly touch on the issue relating to complaints. These complaints that you see, Chairperson, in this dashboard are the complaints that we receive through our info lines, through our complaints lines, relating in the main to commissioner conduct, where a user will complain and say the manner in which the commissioner did the case, I was not happy with this and that and that. And then we deal with those complaints. We have our governance structures where we report those. We've dealt with the investigation. We take action where there are merits, and then we deal with those, Chairperson. Thank you. I'll ask Polani to deal with the issue of the national minimum wage, Chairperson. I think that's the last question. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning to the members present and also to the colleagues. Just to respond on the question of the national minimum wage, yes, we do have people who offend and were not meeting the required minimum wage as required by the Act. And as and when we receive such dispute, we do set them down and we do appoint commissioners to assist. And at times, we also, through the engagement that we have, directly communicate with the affected employer as a way of trying to speed up the issue of non-payment or paying at a minimum level. And we do at times get a very positive response where the employee will then be paid what is due. But of course, it is true that we have people who are repeat offenders, and especially in sectors like your domestic work and in sectors like your security and the agriculture. And we also do have activities like the outreach where we go out and educate members of the public, educate the workers in general, and also through our users forum, we do invite your security, your agricultural people to try and educate them on these aspects and to also impress on them on the importance of them adhering, and also impress on them that if they do not, the matter will be brought to us. If it cannot be resolved at conciliation, it will be arbitrated and they will be ordered to pay what is due to the work. Those, in terms of us being able to give stats as of now, that may not be possible, but I'm sure if we go back to the office, we can be able to get the stats and send them through if they are indeed required. And coming to the other area that was asked on the petrol attendants. The petrol attendants belong to a bargaining council. The Motor Industries National Bargaining Council. And as such, as you would also appreciate, where there is a bargaining council that has jurisdiction and has been accredited to deal with dispute in that sector, the CCMA would not deal with those matters. So all the disputes that relates to the petrol attendants will be taken to the bargaining council for the bargaining council to attend and to deal with them. I think that will relate to the issues of the national minimum wage and also the area that has been raised about the petrol attendants and where their disputes would go to. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Nedlac.
Thanks, Chairperson. So let me go through the questions. The Honorable Carter was asking about the progress with the labor, well, he was asking about the scope, mandate, and timeframes of the Labour Law Reform Task Team, and also whether there's small business participation. So in terms of the scope and mandate, the task team was consists of representatives of organized business, labor, and government, mandated by the Labour Market Chamber. And they decided that there were different phases in terms of looking at labour law reform. The first phase is really focusing on collective bargaining, dispute resolution, strikes, and so on, improving the functioning of the LRA, and included in that bundle of issues is the issue of collective bargaining and extension of bargaining council agreements to non-parties. I think there are proposals there that have been presented by a government. They are still in engagement and negotiation. There will also be a second phase, which will be focusing on the codes of good practice on retrenchments and dismissal, as well as informal workers, definition of workers, remote work, and so on. So in terms of small business participation, it is up to organized business and government to determine who comes and participates. I think the Department of Small Business Development is there, and I would imagine that from the side of business, some of that business does represent both big and small business. In terms of the governance task team, you wanted confirmation whether the process is complete and what is the way ahead. So a draft bill, constitution and protocol for tabling of documents was presented to the ManCo in January. The protocol document was then agreed by the ManCo and approved by the EXCO. So we are in the process of implementing that one. It's a revised document. In respect of the constitution and the bill, there were a number of issues raised by social partners. So those two documents have been referred back to the governance task team, but I'm hoping that in the next set of governance meetings, they will be finalized. When the constitution is finalized, it can be implemented. In other words, when it's approved by the Executive Council, but with the bill will then need to be considered by the Department of Employment and Labour State's law advisors and then put into the parliamentary schedule. In terms of the UIF subcommittee and how we exercise oversight, so the UIF subcommittee was a subcommittee of the COVID Rapid Response Task Team, and it met at some point weekly, then every second week and so on. And there were regular reports given by the UIF commissioner about how they were addressing the backlogs, how they were addressing challenges with their IT system and so on. And the social partners also had an opportunity to raise issues from their constituencies. However, when the COVID Nedlac Rapid Response Task Team closed down because its terms of reference had come to an end, the UIF subcommittee also had to complete its work. And there was a decision made in Nedlac that there should be a further task team established around, we called it the UIF Modernization Task Team. And it has taken over some of that work, but it doesn't meet as frequently as the COVID structure did. But there is an acknowledgement that there is still a backlog, there's still an attempt to monitor and engage with the UIF on the backlog. I think in terms of a mechanism for someone like yourself, I think you need to address that through the ministry. And your last issue related to the load shedding crisis and how is Nedlac positioning itself in relationship to that. So in 2020, Nedlac did sign a social compact, which dealt essentially with the challenges that were facing Eskom and measures to do that. There is an energy work stream, which constantly monitors what is happening in that energy space. And in fact, there have been a number of urgent meetings that have happened since January, focusing really on 2 or 3 issues. The one is how to improve the load shedding schedule to mitigate against negative socioeconomic implications, in particular relating to food security. There has also been an engagement on what could be done in the short term around the cost of diesel, because more and more companies have to use diesel not for transport, and also some engagement about how the issue of what's called net metering can be improved. All these measures, the real positioning, as you ask about Nedlac, is how do we mitigate the impact on small businesses, on big businesses, and also then on employment. So I think that's the positioning of the Nedlac social partners in the energy work stream. Then Honorable Bagram asked about the promises made by the president in the SONA. I think that, remember, I'm reporting on the first quarter, not on what's happened subsequently. So I can't, some of the issues that the president raised, as I indicated earlier on, are also a focus in Nedlac, both in the energy work stream, in the SMME work stream, and in the labor law reform task team. But I wouldn't say that any of the specific things that he raised come explicitly from agreements reached yet in Nedlac. Then I think it was Comrade Ndabe who asked about foreign nationals and what expression of this issue is happening in Nedlac. So at the end of 2021, the Department of Employment and Labour tabled the employment strategy, as well amendments to, I think it's the employment services legislation, which was about regulating employment, including of foreign nationals. The initial comments were made by the Nedlac social partners, and as I understand, the department is considering them as well as public comments, and then will, I understand, return to Nedlac for further engagement. Honourable Chairperson, I hope I've done justice to those questions. Thank you very much for them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Before Productivity SA responds, there's something that I would like to clarify. In our last meeting, when the chair, in her opening remarks, make a note or a comment about the article which was on the 30th or 31st of December, Sunday Times headlines on the investments which UIF, Productivity SA, and we then, and in raising that, the minister responded by saying, yes, we saw that, we commented, we said that must be halted. We are conducting an investigation, which will then come and present the outcome of that to the committee. And I will humbly request members to be patient a little bit. We're almost there. In terms of inviting the executive authority and the entities affected to come, but in the main, the executive authority, because that's where the buck stops. So, Honorable Bagram, I thought I must clear that. Not that I'm undermining the question, but the minister is coming. The minister is going to be invited to come and explain whatever and the processes of the investigation. So I think that is that. Productivity SA will then respond to others, but I thought it is important for me to clarify that. And also your question about UIF. UIF has not come to present today, but I think whether the DG would like to respond to that, but I don't think it will really be fair to ask a question on an entity that is not in front of us today. So I thought it's important for me to just make those clarities. Productivity SA, you may then respond to other questions that have been asked.
Thank you, Chairperson. The question I've noted is from Honorable Konto with regard to the issue of cumulative targets, how they can be a reason for not performing. I think I should clarify that when I mentioned the issue of cumulative target, it was not in the context of a reason for deviation. It was solely with giving assurance to the committee that targets that are cumulative by nature do not necessarily get dropped at the end of the quarter, because they are part and parcel of an annual performance plan, which means as an entity, we still have the responsibility that those two targets that have not been achieved in Q1 are still achieved within this particular financial year. So it was within that particular context. When it comes to reasons for the two targets not having been achieved, we have stipulated one of the target in slide number 19, which was a target that have to do with the regional milestone workshops that we were supposed to have hosted, about 2 of them. And we have indicated that we could not host those particular workshops in the first quarter. We do this in partnership with other strategic alliances, and the state of readiness was not at a level where we could host them in that particular period. And we've subsequently held those in the quarters thereafter. So as I've indicated with regard to cumulative, it means if it has not been achieved in a particular quarter, if we are still within that particular financial year, we have an opportunity to achieve it in the next. The second one, the information is on slide 21, wherein we were supposed to achieve about 400. Our actual was at 291. So there's an explanation there for deviation as well as remedial action in slide 21. But in a nutshell, we were targeting to assist about 8 distressed entities in Q1. We managed to exceed that target by 1. We achieved 9. So what happened with regard to the numbers in terms of jobs? Our planning is based historically on what we have seen in terms of our numbers. On an average of our average client is employing about roughly 50 people. As of that particular Q1, we found that the average have dropped to about 32, which means smaller enterprises than that envisaged in the planning were participating at that particular point in time. Hence, though we have overachieved on the number of enterprises, the number of jobs was less than what has been targeted in that particular period. There's a question from Honorable Nonsele related to the business turnaround and recovery in this particular one that I've just explained right now. To what extent can productivity, say, be able to assist where there's large scale or possible large scale retrenchment, whether it's big corporates or state-owned enterprises? And he mentioned example of South African post offices. Our mandate is very clear from the Employment Services Act that we have to assist those that are in economic distress. And our Employment Services Act defines employment distress. It actually looks at it from the financial and operational perspective, where there's prospects of retrenching workers if that particular distress is actually not arrested. So from that Employment Services Act, it's clear that any entity that is going through distress with a possibility of retrenching workers is a potential client for the business turnaround and recovery, irrespective of its size. With regard to the South African Post Office in particular, we are in engagement with the South African Post Services. And I think I will want to direct the committee, I think, to slide 29, which I think will assist in my response. In slide 29 under B10R, the second point there, we have recommended temporary relaxation of the entry requirements for business turnaround and recovery, which requires distressed companies to be in good standing with UIF and SARS, so that we allow opportunities for company to be assisted with compliance while concurrently assisting them to save jobs. We realize the importance of company being in compliance in good standing with SARS and UIF. However, it has become very apparent that when businesses are in distress, one of the symptoms that you will see is cash flow problems, which means businesses will be struggling to pay its creditors. And that doesn't exempt UIF and South African Revenue Services. So we are recommending that because of that distress, if the guys are not able to pay for UIF at that particular point in time or SARS, let's work together with UIF and SARS to make sure that we record these particular enterprises. Let's not throw away the baby with bathwater. Help this company in order to retain jobs and work with them to bring them back to compliance as well. Because as things stand, that particular requirement is leaving so many distressed businesses out in the cold, because once they don't qualify, it means business turnaround and recovery cannot assist. So it is the case in point with our engagement with the South African Post Office, that they find themselves in such a situation. So right now, for us to do that, because that has not been addressed, the recommendation that we've placed here is that this engagement with our own revenue services to see if there's certain agreements that can be reached so that a business turnaround and recovery can be allowed to enter into that particular space. Those are the questions that I've noted, Chairperson. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Honorable Nonsele, is it a legacy hand? Or is it
Yes,
a new
Chair,
hand?
No, Chair, it's a legacy hand, except that Mr. Tifularo was donating my other question to someone else. Because both questions were from me. Okay, thanks. No, it's an old hand, man. Thanks,
okay. Did you any addition to the responses that have been made?
Chair, thank you very much. No, Chair, I think the colleagues have dealt with all the questions adequately.
Okay, thank you. DM, before we wrap up.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
DM is summarized. Sorry, DM. Mr. Moro Toba, can you, yes. Oh, sorry, DM. Mr. Morotoba, were you saying something? Okay, over to you, DM.
No, thank you, Honorable Chair.
Kwenzekandoni apha kuMr. Morotoba. Over to you, TM.
Thank you, Chair. I think I must agree. Good morning to you, Chair, and honorable members, our DG and our officials. I think I must say that our officials from CCMA, Nedlac, and Productivity SA, I think we must agree that they've been able to respond to the issues and present what is before us, what is needed by the community. But I think there's a question that was asked by one who was asking about the investigation by the minister. Cut from time to time. I might not have heard the response, but I was saying, honorable members, can we await the response? I think the minister has done some investigations on the matters, and the report is ready, but the minister has to present it first to the president, and I think the committee will also be as to what happened to such an investigation and what was the outcome. So I just wanted to only speak on that matter over and above the fact that I think we are at par with what our officials have said, and we are ready, Chair, as always, and honorable members, should there be any outstanding information that might not necessarily have been responded to the satisfaction of the committee. We are prepared to submit such if honorable members would like such in writing. We are always open for that. So I want to take this opportunity, Chair, to thank you for this rare moment to just make an input. Thank you.
Thank you, TM, and thank you to the DG and the staff and the leadership of the entities. There's one announcement which I think the office of the chair is to make, so that everybody who is here, in particular members, the ministry and the DG, is that the meeting of the 1st of March is going to be a physical meeting in Cape Town. The meeting of the 1st of March is going to be physical. The venue and time will then be members will, and the department and the ministry will be informed in due course. The reason that I'm making this announcement, I want members to know now so that they prepare themselves, so that people are not said they were told in a short notice. You will then receive a formal notice from the Secretariat following the protocols, but I thought it is important for members to be aware, and the ministry and the department and members in particular, that meeting is then going to take place. The meeting of the 1st is going to be a physical meeting. Otherwise, apart from that, thank you very much, honorable members. Plenary starts at 2 today, and our meeting is adjourned until we meet again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.